Ever find yourself scrolling through Instagram, seeing those dreamy European cityscapes and thinking, man, wouldn't it be amazing to just pack up and move there?
Oh, absolutely. You see the cobblestone streets, the charming little cafes.
Yeah, maybe even the idea of a more relaxed pace of life. It's a pretty common thought that Europe equals some kind of ultimate upgrade in quality of life.
It certainly holds a powerful attraction for many. There's a strong perception of it being a place with, well, rich history, cultural depth, and often more progressive social policies.
Exactly. And that yearning is really the starting point for what we're diving into today. Our source material is a YouTube video from Nomad Capitalist titled Where I'd Actually Live in Europe and Where I Wouldn't.
Ah, nomad capitalists. Okay.
Now, this isn't your typical travel guide just like gushing about the best gelato. This video takes a hard look at which European cities are ranked highest for livability,
Right.
but it filters that information through a very specific lens. The needs and realities of high net worth individuals and the actual practicalities of making such a big move.
So not just is it nice, but is it practical? And maybe financially sensible for certain people.
Precisely. The core question the video poses is whether the cities that consistently top those most livable lists are truly the best options for everyone, especially when you start factoring in things like, well, how much tax you'll pay and how easy it is to actually gain residency.
It challenges some of the assumptions we often make, doesn't it?
It really does. So, our mission in this deep dive is to understand which European cities are generally seen as the most livable, to look at the criteria behind those rankings, and then, crucially, to see if those criteria really align with the real-world considerations and potential obstacles for someone seriously contemplating a move.
Okay.
We're going to zero in on how straightforward it is to live in these highly rated places and what the financial implications look like. We're essentially going to unpack what makes a city livable, according to the experts, and compare that to a potentially very different picture for a specific group of people. Looking at that gap between the dream and the sometimes complex reality. Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this then. The video kicks off by acknowledging those very reasons that probably popped into your head when I mentioned moving to Europe.
Yeah, the quality of life thing.
Right, the perceived high quality of life, the generally more tolerant social policies in many European countries, good educational systems.
Maybe getting a second passport eventually.
That too, yeah, the possibility of getting a second passport down the line, and this overall sense of a smoother transition into a new life, soft landing, as they put it, sounds pretty appealing initially, doesn't it?
It definitely plays into a common vision of Europe as a welcoming and stable place to settle, no doubt.
Right. But then the video introduces a key point of tension.
Ah, here it comes.
While Europe looks fantastic,
Yeah.
especially when you compare it to, say, some of the current goings-on in other parts of the world, wealthy individuals might actually find it less attractive.
These are the taxes.
Primarily, yeah, because of those well-known higher European taxes and other financial aspects.
This immediately brings in a really important angle that often gets missed in simple top cities lists. The financial impact can significantly change how desirable a location is for certain people.
Totally. And to really illustrate this, the video shares a compelling little story. It's about a wealthy American who bought a stunning villa in Italy.
Living the dream, right? Sounds perfect.
You'd think. But then reality hit when he discovered the rules of the Schengen area meant he couldn't just live there year-round without a visa.
Ah, the 9180-day rule. That catches so many people.
Exactly. For those unfamiliar, the Schengen area is, that group of European countries with open borders internally. But there are strict rules on how long non-residents can stay 90 out of every 180 days.
Which came as a complete surprise to him, apparently.
Totally. Suddenly, his Italian dream came with some significant logistical headaches. It's a perfect example of how simply wanting to live somewhere doesn't automatically grant you the legal right to do so.
Yeah, the practicalities of immigration can be a real eye-opener for those who haven't, delved into the specifics before. It's not just about buying a house.
Not at all. And the solution this person ended up pursuing, Malta's citizenship program.
Okay, the investment route.
Yeah, which the video mentions cost around $1 million. Now, while $1 million sounds steep, it essentially buys you the right to live and work across the EU.
Freedom many others struggle to obtain, that's for sure.
This really highlights a fundamental barrier for non-EU citizens wanting to live in these top European destinations. Easy access often boils down to having ancestry, securing a job, marrying an EU citizen.
Or making a substantial financial investment, like the Malta example.
Exactly. It takes a conversation beyond just how nice a place is to live and directly into the complexities of immigration law and, well, financial resources.
Right, it really underscores that the ability to reside in these sought-after locations isn't something everyone can simply take for granted.
Okay, so the video then pivots to looking at some well-established livability rankings, specifically mentioning the Economist Intelligence Unit's most livable cities.
The EIU rankings, yeah, those are pretty well known.
According to their data at the time the video was made, the top European cities were Vienna with a score of 98.4,
Wow, high score.
Copenhagen at 98, Zurich with 97.1, Geneva at 96.8, and Helsinki at 95.6. Those are some seriously high scores.
Absolutely. And the EIU scoring system, as the video points out, takes into account a wide array of factors. A score between 80 and 100 is considered excellent, right?
Yeah, excellent. And 70 to 80 is still rated as pretty good. So these top-ranked cities are clearly excelling across many of the criteria the EIU uses.
Things like stability, healthcare, culture, environment, education, infrastructure.
Exactly. And the video's initial thought is that, okay, these cities are likely fantastic places to live, especially for middle and lower income individuals.
You can see why. High scores generally indicate strong infrastructure, good healthcare, quality education, overall stability. Things that really matter day to day for most people.
These kinds of rankings often prioritize aspects that directly affect the daily lives of a large segment of the population, like public transport, safety, cultural stuff.
Makes sense.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The central argument of the video is that these very top-ranked cities might not be the best for, and they use the phrase 7- or 8-figure entrepreneurs or investors.
Okay. So great for many, maybe not optimal for the very wealthy.
That's the core idea being put forward. It really makes you reconsider things, doesn't it? What do you see as some of the key differences and priorities when we talk about livability for the general population versus someone with significant wealth considering a move?
Well, it raises a crucial point about whose needs and values are being reflected in these widely cited rankings, right? What one person considers essential for a high quality of life can be very different for someone else, especially when their financial situation is, well, significantly different.
Exactly. And a major point the video focuses on is the difficulty of simply moving to these top-ranked cities if you're not already a citizen of an EU member state.
The accessibility challenge.
Let's dig a little deeper into that. Vienna, for instance. Apparently, it has a residence program for individuals with substantial financial resources.
Okay.
But it's described as a little vague and, crucially, not tax-friendly. So while you might be able to get in, the tax implications might make you think twice.
Right. That highlights that even when pathways exist, the financial burden, especially tax, can be a major deterrent. High net worth individuals tend to be particularly sensitive to the level of taxation.
Then you have Copenhagen and Denmark. The video points out that the primary ways for non-EU citizens to gain residency seem to be through marriage to a Danish citizen or securing a job offer.
Which the speaker admits isn't really his area of expertise, the job offer part.
Right. It really underscores that without EU citizenship or a huge investment like that Malta example, just deciding to move to these countries isn't straightforward.
The emphasis here is on the often strict immigration policies of some of these highly rated nations. They tend to prioritize their own citizens and those with close ties or specific skills they need.
Zurich and Geneva in Switzerland offer a slightly different picture, though.
Switzerland. Always a bit different.
The video notes that there is potential for non-EU citizens, specifically mentioning a lump sum tax program that can lead to a residence permit.
The Pauschal system, yeah.
And here's a surprising detail. Even for someone who got Maltese citizenship for EU access, the tax advantages under Switzerland's lump sum program could potentially be significantly better than what they'd pay as an American or even as a resident of Malta.
That's interesting. So Switzerland's specific tax systems, designed to attract wealthy individuals, might offer advantages even over other EU options. But those programs usually have their own specific requirements, mind you. They aren't just open to everyone.
Good point. And then we come back around to Helsinki and Finland.
Similar issues to Copenhagen, the video suggests.
Yeah, presented as facing similar accessibility issues. The recurring theme here is that unless you possess a passport from an EU member state, either through ancestry or those investment programs we discussed, your options for simply relocating to these most livable places are quite limited.
That EU passport really seems to be the key that unlocks that freedom of movement within the European Union. It's fundamental to the EU structure.
It prioritizes its own citizens, naturally creating a significant hurdle for individuals from outside the EU seeking the same rights.
Exactly.
So this naturally leads us to consider factors beyond just those top-line livability scores. The video starts to question whether things like, say, an excellent public transportation system or numerous sports facilities.
Things that boost the EIU scores.
Right. Are those really the primary concerns for someone with substantial wealth, especially when those come hand in hand with very high taxes?
It's a really astute point about the potential mismatch between the criteria in broad surveys and the specific priorities of high-income earners. What constitutes a high quality of life can vary significantly depending on individual circumstances and financial considerations.
Take healthcare, for instance. Copenhagen offers universal healthcare, which sounds fantastic on the surface.
Yeah, free healthcare, great benefit for most.
But the video raises the question. If you're a successful individual, potentially paying over 50% in taxes, is that free healthcare truly the most valuable option for you?
Good question.
You might actually prefer the flexibility and potentially shorter wait times of private healthcare and a lower overall tax burden. It's a really interesting point about perceived value versus the actual cost and individual preference.
It forces us to think about the trade-offs inherent in different social and economic models. While comprehensive public services are undoubtedly valuable for many, their funding mechanisms, the high taxes, can be less appealing to those with high incomes who might prefer private options.
This is where the idea of pretty good cities comes in, those that score in the 70-80 range on livability indexes.
Maybe offering a better overall balance for certain people.
That's what the video suggests. Maybe aiming for the absolute highest score isn't the optimal strategy if it comes with significant drawbacks in terms of taxes and ease of access.
It's about finding the right combination of factors that meet your individual needs rather than just chasing the highest possible score in every single category. For some, a slightly lower livability ranking might be more than offset by other significant advantages, like lower taxes.
And that brings us neatly to the discussion of tax-advantaged alternatives within Europe. Dublin, Ireland gets brought up. It still boasts a respectable EIU score, 91.1.
It's still very high, yeah. But the key is the tax system.
Exactly. The key here is their non-domicile or remittance-based tax system. Essentially, it's a system where you're only taxed on the income you actually bring into Ireland.
Right. So foreign income kept offshore isn't taxed locally.
Precisely. The video explains that for a high earner, this could potentially slash their tax bill significantly, maybe down to single digits or even effectively zero with careful financial planning.
Plus, Ireland has other advantages.
Yeah, the added benefit of relatively easy integration due to the English language and the possibility of eventually obtaining citizenship.
Ireland's tax laws have definitely been strategically developed to attract international talent and investment. It offers a significant financial incentive for those who qualify for non-domicile status. And the language is a huge plus for many Anglophones.
Then the video touches on Barcelona, which also scores well, 91.4, and Madrid in Spain.
Spain. What's the angle there?
They mention the Beckham Law. It's basically a special tax regime that allows certain high earners moving to Spain to be taxed at a lower flat rate for a set period, like 5 or 6 years. Ah, okay, a temporary benefit.
Yeah. But it also points out the increasing difficulty of obtaining residency in Spain due to potential changes in their golden visa program.
Right, so it serves as a reminder that these situations can change. Immigration rules and tax laws aren't set in stone.
Definitely. Spain has tried to attract foreign residents with favorable tax policies, but yeah, these programs can evolve, introducing a degree of uncertainty.
Okay, so we have the top-tier cities with high scores but potential tax access issues, and then places like Ireland and Spain offering specific tax advantages, though maybe with some caveats.
Exactly. Now, things get really interesting as we move into what the video calls fast improving, potentially underrated options.
Okay, going off the beaten path a bit.
Kinda. These are cities that might not be at the very top of the overall livability charts, but offer compelling advantages, particularly when it comes to cost of living and tax rates. Sofia, Bulgaria is highlighted.
Bulgaria, interesting.
Yeah, flat 10% income tax. It's in the EU, it's in the Schengen area, and there's the possibility of obtaining a special residence permit. Wow, 10% flat tax. That's a stark contrast to some of those top-tier high-tax cities we discussed earlier, like Copenhagen.
Huge difference. Bulgaria represents a different kind of value proposition, prioritizing a low tax burden and EU access, even if its overall livability score, according to traditional metrics, might be lower than Vienna or Copenhagen.
It appeals to a different set of priorities, particularly financial ones.
Budapest, Hungary is also mentioned. Decent personal tax rates, apparently, and low corporate tax.
Okay.
Belgrade, Serbia, where the speaker apparently has a residence, is noted for its flexible tax options and significantly lower cost of living.
Serbia. So outside the EU for now, but maybe attractive for cost and tax flexibility.
Seems to be the idea. And Athens, Greece, gets a mention for its lump sum tax option.
Ah, another specific tax incentive like Switzerland's. Countries actively trying to attract wealthier residents.
Exactly. These cities offer a trade-off. Potentially lower costs and taxes in exchange for perhaps fewer of the perfect amenities you might find in the very top-ranked cities.
But for some individuals, this trade-off can be incredibly beneficial. It allows them more financial freedom and flexibility.
The video does emphasize, though, that moving to these lower tax locations might require more careful planning to actually take full advantage of those rates.
Compared to just moving to a zero-tax place like Dubai, you mean?
Yeah. It's not always as simple as just picking up and moving. Understanding the local tax laws and structuring things correctly is crucial.
Navigating the tax regulations and residency requirements in these jurisdictions often necessitates expert advice and a well-thought-out financial strategy. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. Professional guidance is often recommended.
Good point. But beyond just the financial aspects, these alternative options also bring in other important considerations.
Like lifestyle,
Hmm.
personal values.
Exactly. And that often sought after second passport. The video mentions that Serbia and Ireland, for instance, might offer more accessible routes to citizenship than some of the other locations we've been discussing.
That desire for a second passport is a significant motivator for many people considering international moves. And different countries definitely offer varying pathways and timelines for obtaining citizenship. That can be a key factor in the overall decision.
Totally. Finally, the video arrives at what it terms the where you are treated best philosophy.
Okay, the big takeaway message.
Pretty much. The ultimate point is that you really shouldn't just blindly follow those general livability rankings. You need to think about where you, as an individual with your specific financial situation and personal needs, will be treated best.
Because what's ideal for someone earning a typical salary is likely to be very different from what's best for a successful business owner or investor.
Exactly. This really underscores the highly personal nature of this kind of decision. There's no single best place to live. It depends entirely on your individual circumstances and what your top priorities are.
Makes total sense.
The video even briefly mentions Singapore and Hong Kong, although they aren't in Europe, obviously.
Right, just as comparison points.
Yeah, as highly ranked global cities with favorable tax environments and good weather, just to illustrate that there are other models to consider beyond the traditional European ideal.
Okay.
The suggestion is that for some, maybe a less perfect but more affordable and tax-friendly base like Belgrade.
Combined with travel.
Yeah, combined with frequent travel to cultural hubs like Paris or cities in Spain, might be a more strategic and ultimately more fulfilling choice.
It's about optimizing your primary location for your core needs. Maybe that's financial freedom, maybe ease of doing business, and then using travel to experience other desirable aspects of the world.
And it all boils down to individual preferences, too. The video highlights that with an anecdote about someone whose wife was absolutely set on moving to Spain.
Even though the taxes might be higher than somewhere like Belgrade.
Right, higher than Belgrade, though still lower than they were paying in the U.S. Sometimes non-financial factors just take precedence, and that's perfectly understandable.
Absolutely. Ultimately, the decision of where to live is a complex interplay of financial, practical, and very, very personal considerations. There's no single right answer.
So to sum up our deep dive into this video, we've seen that while the top-ranked most livable European cities definitely have a clear appeal,
They might not be the most accessible or financially advantageous for everyone, particularly those with significant wealth.
right, factors beyond those standard livability metrics like the intricacies of tax laws and the ease or difficulty of obtaining residency and ultimately citizenship.
Those are absolutely critical things to consider. It really highlights the importance of looking beyond surface-level rankings and doing some serious in-depth research into the specific requirements and benefits of each location.
tailored to your own unique needs and circumstances.
Exactly.
So instead of just aiming for the best based on broad surveys, here's something to really think about. What specific factors truly define livable for you?
What are your non-negotiables?
Yeah. And are there perhaps some less obvious European locations out there that might actually align better with those needs and offer some unexpected advantages that you haven't even considered yet?
It's time to dig a little deeper, maybe,
Uh,
and personalize that European dream.